I'm Nintendo.
And I'm Sega. This is Console Wars. Ys. So what is Ys? Ys is a Japanese role-playing game series that began in 1987. It follows the adventures of red-haired protagonist, Adel, as he travels to different lands and rids them of evil. Though the game looks like Wise, it's actually pronounced Ys, like geese or fleece. Not counting the remakes, there have been a total of 7 games made, with the last one being released in 2010 on the PSP.
The game we're looking at today is Wise 3, Wanderer from Wise.
Whoa! It's not Wise, it's Ys. Weren't you listening? I just explained that.
I don't actually pay attention when you're talking, but anyway, Wise 3 is
Ys!
Ys 3 is a departure for the series, foregoing the overhead gameplay, and adopting a side-scrolling adventure gameplay, much like the classic Zelda 2 Adventures of Link. There are many versions of Ys 3, from the original on the PC all the way to a re-release on the PSP. We're going to look at the versions for the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Which one is better? Let's find out.
Alright, I'm just gonna come out and say it. Graphics for Sega aren't that great.
Really? Because the graphics on the Super Nintendo, they're not so great either.
Oh man, I'm really glad to hear that, because I was losing nights of sleep over my graphics.
I know, I almost got into a white Ford Bronco and ditched town because of my graphics. And I murdered a white woman. And her lover. Anyway, let's look at the graphics.
Okay, so you'll notice right off the bat how small everything is. They put all these visuals in this tiny picture frame. There's not much details in most of these characters either. The villains look a little better. They're bigger, so they have more detail, but their animations are a little limited. The levels look good. There's also a bit of that 3D going on.
The graphics on Super Nintendo are pretty similar.
That picture frame makes the images smaller. The characters also have no detail. Enemies are detailed but choppy. Levels look pretty good, and 3D is here as well.
Well, as similar as these games are, graphics gotta go to Super Nintendo.
The picture frame is a little bigger on Super Nintendo. It allows things to be bigger and clearer. Let's compare this boss fight. On Sega, it's small, a little blurry. I can barely tell what's going on. But on Super Nintendo, it's bigger and a lot easier on the eyes. Looks like I'm not going to need that LASIK corrective surgery. I was just playing the Sega version. Even though they're just a little bit better, graphics go to Nintendo.
Well, the graphics for Sega weren't great. They put a little more effort into the presentation.
I've got a nice intro that gives a little backstory to the game. Then, when you start, there's this cool cutscene that sets the story in motion. There's also in-game cutscenes to keep the story going. It's all topped off with a cutscene at the end, which gives you some sweet, sweet closure.
Yeah? You like those cutscenes? Wait till you get a load of Super Nintendos.
So, the in-game cutscenes are practically the same, with some of the dialogue only slightly changed. No, where the Super Nintendo shines are the opening and closing cutscenes. These cutscenes aren't just pictures with words. The characters actually move. It's like watching a movie with no audible dialogue. But anyways, it's still better than just a still with words. And speaking of words, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Look at all that text. Have you honestly ever read it? Way too much text for 1 or 2 pictures. Sega cutscenes are just encyclopedia after encyclopedia. Nintendo keeps the text short with lots of different animated pictures to keep your attention. Speaking of text, what's a harb? Can you tell me, since they only sell herbs in Nintendo?
Well, Nintendo's presentation isn't perfect.
Look at your hero on the title screen. He looks ridiculous, like a troll doll, too lame to sell. And tell me he's not on meth during this cutscene.
Yeah, you're just jealous because your cutscenes, while nice to look at, are overall boring. As Mr. Belvedere used to say, a little animation goes a long way. And best presentation goes to Super Nintendo.
You are not doing good, Sega. How's your sound?
Sounds just fine on Sega. What's so funny? Music's perfectly fine on Sega.
Yeah, correction. The music's perfectly fine on Sega. Until you hear Super Nintendo's music. Let's have some back-to-back songs.
Nintendo's music is more clear. It has better instrumentation. It's more dynamic. Nintendo also sounds more fitting of an epic adventure.
Well, one of your sound effects is a blatant ripoff of another popular game. Sound familiar?
Don't be all high and mighty. You stole the exact same sound effect. Music quality is still better on the Super Nintendo. Sound goes to Nintendo.
What's the matter, Sega? You look sad. Why don't you explain your gameplay? That'll cheer you up.
Oh, well.
How about this vodka then?
Yeah, that'll work, yeah.
Oh, the gameplay is simple. You got one button to attack, one button to jump, and one button to use items. You just hack your way through the game, and if a boss is too hard, you just level up. Pretty simple gameplay.
Well, the Super Nintendo's gameplay is exactly the same.
It's not any better, and it's not any worse. It's just like you said before. I have no insults, no put-downs, so it looks like we have a tie with the gameplay.
Ty? So I didn't lose gameplay?
Yep.
Okay! Wait a minute. But my controller only has 3 buttons and you really only have 3 moves, so maybe because my controller is better for the game, maybe then I should actually... What are you doing?
Just take the tie. The game is very similar for both systems. When it comes to graphics, presentation, and sound, the Super Nintendo is a better game. The most obvious difference is in the opening and the ending, which is just interesting to see since they're completely different for the same game.
It may not seem like a big deal since both games play the same, but if you had to spend your money on one game, wouldn't you rather spend it on the one that looked and sounded nicer? It's really no contest.
The best Ys game goes to Super Nintendo.